Hey, all you mentees, this is the Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, and join me today for part 1 of my top 20 comic book artists of all time. So please stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Now, before we get started on this list, I do want to remind you, if you have not subscribed yet, to please hit that subscribe button because we put out videos every day. Now, let's talk about the rules of this list. Number 1, you won't see any manga artists on this list, mainly because that list deserves its own videos. So keep an eye on the channel for that. Number 2, I'm not just talking about comic book cover artists. I'm talking about people that have worked in comic books that have been able to do sequential art form, because that's what we're looking at, right? We're looking at panels, and these are the artists that stuck out to me for many years. And holy crap, this list was hard to put together. You're probably not going to see your favorite artists on this list, but in case you do, awesome. Let me know who we share in common. This is a top 20 list. It is a countdown. So today we're going to be talking about the number 20 to number 11. And then probably tomorrow or maybe the day after, depending on how long I have to edit, I will be talking about numbers 10 to my number 1 favorite artist of all time. So you'll see some European artists, some artists from over in South America, but like I said, no manga artists because they deserve their own list. Now, let's get started. Again, this is just my opinion. Number 20, we're kicking it off with somebody I had already talked about earlier. I made a video, a tribute to him, and that's Juan Giménez. Juan Giménez recently died on April 2nd, but he leaves behind this wonderful work of art. And if you're wondering why I enjoy his art more, please check out that video. It's a whole tribute to him. I just released it this past week. His attention to mechanical detail is what really put him on the map for a lot of people. And of course, he went on to do Meta Barons with Jodorowsky. And once you work with Jodorowsky, that's all she wrote. He's not the only person that worked with Jodorowsky that's on this list, by the way. Number 19, Eduardo Risso. It's really weird to think about the time that I was reading Broken City, the Batman Broken City story. I just did not get his art. I was like, I don't get it. Why do people like this guy? He's like a weird mix of Tim Sale with Will Eisner. But by the time I was reading 100 Bullets, and by the time that I was reading Night of Vengeance, the Batman story from the Flashpoint, I was on board. I got it. Eduardo Risso, man, his use of shadows and lights are awesome. Like, he stands out above the rest. His panels are easy to follow. He's got this really interesting and unique mix of just anime with American art, but you throw in some stuff like graffiti in there. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but he to me is one of my favorite artists. Moonshine, anything that he's done after 100 Bullets, I'm a fan of. Number 18, Arthur Adams. Now, I know that Michael Golden, at least to me, was the very first artist that I remember here in America that was inspired by anime and manga and kind of brought that into his art. And please, in the comments, leave that down below if I'm wrong, if you remember somebody else doing that beforehand. But Arthur Adams is the guy that really stood out to me. His big eyes, the way that he drew just amazing action sequences. Like, there's so much detail in his panels, and that was one thing that I remember about his panels. There's so much action and just dynamic poses that reminded me of manga, the way that manga was drawn. And for someone that drew with immense detail in each of his panels, each of his action sequences, his artwork was always easy to follow, while still making his characters look damn good. And that's why Arthur, I mean, come on. Long shot? Guy had a mullet, and he still made him look badass. Number 17, Fiona Staples. Now, this is a lady that I have been following since she did work on Saga. And she's done stuff with Archie, with Mark Waid. But, let's face it, the art is what really stands out in Saga. It's its major selling point. It is beautiful. Fiona Staples has this bold and colorful art style that just clashes so wonderfully with the dark and twisted story that Brian K. Vaughan is able to tell. Her character designs are also amazing. She could be doing her own video games. She could be designing characters for fighting games, for anime. She is just a great, phenomenal artist. Number 16, Steve Ditko. Now, in my ignorant youth, I would put Steve Ditko with just pile him on top of all the other old guys that were drawing comics, you know, Gil Kane, John Romita, Jack Kirby. I'm like, yeah, that's the old guard. You know, give me some new artists. Give me some 80s and 90s extreme art. It's weird how I got older and I learned to appreciate Steve Ditko. I mean, the guy was drawing supernatural comics, horror comics, and then also superhero comics. Like, he was all over the board. I mean, he co-created Spider-Man, he co-created Doctor Strange, co-created The Question. But when you look at especially his Doctor Strange art, you figure this guy is probably doing some drugs. And I know that there were rumors that he was doing LSD when he was drawing some of that psychedelic artwork. But anybody that worked with him could tell you, no, this guy just thought of this stuff out of his head. Like, this is original Steve Ditko stuff. And that's why he is on this list. He is a guy that I wish I had appreciated in my youth. This time, I just want to remind you all to smash that like button if you're enjoying this video, and please leave those comments down below if you have a top 20 list, if you have a top 10 list, or if you want to wait for part 2 of this where my top 10 are going to be. Number 15 is Darwyn Cooke. This is a man that was pure genius and left us way too early. He mixed that classic golden age era art style and was able to modernize it, yet keep the spirit of that purity and innocence during that time in his art. I've never seen another artist. I mean, I've seen other artists kind of do this style, but for some reason he was able to take what you would normally look at and be like, oh, that stuff looks simple. But when you pay attention to his panel layouts and the way that his stories are done, of course, he would also help that he was a writer too, you learn to appreciate how much time it took to draw each of these pictures. And I never got to meet him. That really sucks. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the artists on this list I never got to meet. And I wish I did, just to tell them, you know, I'm sure I would have been drowned in the thousands and millions of other fans that have told them 100,000 times how much they appreciate their art. But still, I wish I had gotten the chance to tell some of these artists how much I appreciate their artwork and how much it means to me. Number 14 is Bernie Wrightson. Now, I'll admit, my first taste of Bernie Wrightson was not a horror comic, which is what he is known for. It was actually the Spider-Man graphic novel Hooky. So that was my very first look at his art. But it is his horror comics that he is known for. He drew the most amazing, horrible looking monsters, Frankenstein, the ghouls. He did stuff for Creepy and Eerie magazine. But when you look at his artwork, whether it's a panel or a page, and you look at the complexity in it, how much detail goes into each of these pieces of art, you figured you get lost easy just by glancing over it. But when you start looking at it, it is so easy to follow because Bernie makes you focus on what you're supposed to be focusing on in that story. And I always appreciated that. I think that is so unique of an artist to do. To draw all these complex drawings and then still tell your eye what to focus on. And that, to me, is the definition of a true master. And there's a reason why a lot of directors and a lot of writers, you know, mourned his death when he passed away. As a matter of fact, Guillermo del Toro said that he took a 24-hour vow of silence in honor of his favorite artist. It says a lot. Number 13, Manara. Milo Manara. Wow, he is probably the exact opposite of Bernie Wrightson when it comes to drawing grotesque, foul, and monster creatures. Because he is known, and rightly so, for his beautiful women. And I'm not talking about his erotica stuff. I mean, if you have had a chance to read any of his stuff, the Manara library that Dark Horse has published, you'll see what I mean by some of the most beautiful pieces of art that have ever glanced comic book pages. He is an amazing artist. And yes, his women do stand out. And at first I didn't get it. I remember looking at some of his art in the 90s. I remember when X-Women came out, that one shot he did with Chris Claremont. I didn't get the appreciation for his artwork. But then, the more I looked at it and the more I read his stuff, the more I was like, okay, no, this guy draws the best women. For some reason, it works and it makes it believable and you start falling for these fictional women. But his art is just so easy to follow. It's clean, it's crisp, and gorgeous. There is not gorgeous. That is the one word. If you're taking anything out of this Manara thing, rambling that I'm doing right now, is gorgeous. Best way to describe his art. Number 12, John Buscema. Now, Big John is probably known as the most influential comic book artist in comic book history to a lot of people, and he deserves it because the man worked on just about every genre. You had war comics, horror comics, sci-fi, westerns, fantasy, and then eventually superheroes. And the crazy thing is, I can't think of a single Marvel superhero without thinking of John Buscema. Whether it's Avengers, whether it's Hulk, whether it's Thor, whether it's X-Men, whether it's the Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer. But the book that did it for me, the book that put him like, okay, this guy stands above the rest, Conan the Barbarian. His art on Conan, which I've never read, and I've just been getting them in omnibus format, and I started reading them as they were coming out. Man, his art on that book is freaking phenomenal. Yeah, I realized that it was Barry Windsor Smith that started it, but Big John is the guy that put Conan on the map. Like, his fantasy art style is amazing, and it's weird because I think about it, in my youth I knew him from just superhero comics, and ironically he did not like drawing superhero comics. Alright, now before I get to number 11, I'm going to do some honorable mentions, and I'll do the same for part 2. So before I get to number 1, I'll do some honorable mentions. And these are just, this list was difficult. I mean, because they're artists that I love, that I was like, damn, I wish I could make this my top 100 list. But then I'll be going on forever. So honorable mentions, of course, are Andy Kubert, Adam Kubert, Mike Wieringo, Tom Rainey, Stuart Eminem. I mean, there's some recent artists that I love, like Jorge Giménez and R.B. Silva. But to finish out this list, don't forget to come back for part 2. Number 11, George Pérez. Is there any other artist that can cram, and cram isn't even the right word, that can fit so many superheroes, so many characters into one panel or one page other than George Pérez? I'm just going to go ahead and say no. I don't think so. There is no one of that magnitude that can do it. It is mind-boggling and unfair that he is that damn good. There's a reason why they pick him, why writers pick him for these big events, why he was the artist chosen for Crisis on Infinite Earths, why he was the artist chosen for Infinity Gauntlet. Is there anyone else that could have represented the Avengers and the Justice League better than him? No. It is insane how much, not just how many characters, but how much detail he puts into his artwork. I have to own Crisis on Infinite Earths to appreciate his art, because there's so many characters that he fits into panels. There's so many things in his background that I want to notice, and I can't do that if it's in trade paperback format. And I know I've talked about Manara when it comes to women. Yes, he draws beautiful women, but George Pérez has always been able to draw these strong and powerful and just drop-dead gorgeous women. So he is on this list for a reason. Now, a lot of these comic book artists, their artwork can be found in books that you can purchase from cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off the cover price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. And check out their bargain bin for even greater deals up to 90% off cover price. And for you minties, Cheap Graphic Novels is running a special promotion. If you're a first-time customer, let them know you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discounts, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was my list. Again, come back for part 2 where I'll be doing my top 10. Let me know in the comments down below if you have your top 20 artists. Go ahead and name number 20 to 11 if you want to, and then wait for part 2 to name your top 10. Let me know which one of these artists you've never heard of and which ones you're willing to try out. I would love to know all those comments down below. Please don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button if you have not subscribed yet. We can be found on Redbubble, where you can get our logo on t-shirts and stickers, and also on Patreon. And that is a really great way to support the channel if you enjoy the content that we make, and you can do so. And thank you to our existing patrons. Remember, everybody, to please stay healthy, please stay safe out there. And yeah, that's all I got. So until next time, much love to you all.